All right, let's dive into this chain of thought prompting, CoT for short, as I'm sure you know. This idea of getting these large language models, the LLMs, to kind of think step by step. It's like, showing your work like back in math class, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this research paper you sent over really gets into the the weeds on it.
It does. So we're going to break it down.
Yeah.
So the paper kicks off by comparing these two types of CoCo, Stepwise ICL and Coherent CoT. Now, Stepwise ICL, you can think of it like a relay race. Each runner, each step is kind of isolated. You just pass the baton, don't look back.
Right. You just keep going.
Keep going. But Coherent CoT, this is where it gets a little more interesting. This is more like a detective piecing together clues, right?
Mm-hmm.
The model considers all the previous steps, even if there were some, missteps along the way.
Yeah, that's a great analogy, because even when we're solving a problem, we don't just forget about the past, especially if we messed up. You learn from it.
Yeah.
It's
like the models are kind of doing the same thing. And what they found is that, not surprisingly, Coherent CoT actually performs better. It's more accurate.
Well, it makes sense, right? If you have more information, even if some of it is wrong, you can kind of self-correct.
Yeah.
And get closer to the real answer.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, they wanted to see, okay, so if it's like a chain,
yeah,
what are the weakest links?
Right.
How sensitive is this CoT to errors? So they introduced noise at different stages. The input, the intermediate steps, and even the final output, just to see where things would, fall apart.
Yeah, to see where it breaks.
And what they found, I thought, was pretty surprising.
Yeah. What do you think was the most interesting finding there?
Well, that it's much more sensitive to errors in those intermediate steps, in the reasoning.
Really?
Yeah.
More than the output?
Much more than the output.
Wow.
So it's really it's not just about getting to the right answer. It's about, like, the journey, the thinking process.
The process, yeah. That makes sense, I guess. Like, if you think about baking a cake, right? If you mess up the ingredients, the measurements, that's like the intermediate steps.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how good your frosting is.
It's ruined.
It's a bad cake.
You've ruined the cake.
But if your frosting's a little messed up, it's still a good cake.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So it's not just about that final output. It's really about the steps along the way.
The journey.
Yeah.
The how you got there.
And it made me think, like, okay, so if it's so sensitive to those intermediate errors, wouldn't it make sense to just, shield the model from those errors, give perfect examples, only the best reasoning?
Yeah, you would think so, right? You'd think you'd want to give it the perfect example so it could learn perfectly.
Yeah.
But that's not what they propose.
That's not what they found.
No.
They proposed the opposite.
What? They're saying introduce errors.
Introduce errors.
On purpose.
On purpose.
That sounds crazy. It sounds like it would break it, right? It sounds like it would make it worse.
It'd just get really confused.
The idea is you give it demonstrations with both the correct reasoning and incorrect reasoning.
Okay.
But you explain why the incorrect reasoning is wrong.
Okay.
So you're not just showing it, here's how to do it right.
Yeah.
You're also showing it, here's how to do it wrong, and here's why it's wrong.
So it's like, here's the pitfall, don't fall in.
Exactly. Don't do this.
Don't do that.
And here's why.
Yeah.
And what they found was this actually improves performance.
Really?
Yeah.
Across the board.
Across different LLMs, different benchmarks. It seems like this actually helps.
I mean, it's kind of like, we learn from our mistakes, right?
Yeah.
But here it's like,
Yeah.
it's learning from curated mistakes. Like, here are the mistakes, don't make them.
Right, yeah.
So it's a shortcut to wisdom, I guess you could say.
Yeah, exactly. It's like giving it a cheat sheet of what not to do.
Right, what not to do. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's counterintuitive, but it seems to work.
So it seems like by giving the model a chance to, grapple with these wrong ways of thinking, it develops a better...
Like an immune system almost.
Yeah, like an immune system.
Yeah.
To bad reasoning.
Yeah.
It can spot the errors better.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
And avoid them.
That's really cool.
It's like it can recognize those bad patterns.
Yeah.
And avoid them.
So how did they go about incorporating these incorrect reasoning paths? Did they just randomly throw in errors?
No, they were very specific. They called them error-aware demonstrations.
Okay.
So they would start with a typical CoT prompt, right?
Here's the problem.
Yeah, problem, step-by-step solution.
Yep.
And then they would add a section.
Yeah.
with an incorrect reasoning path.
Oh, what?
And they would label it as wrong.
So they were explicitly saying, like, don't do this.
Don't do this.
Here's what not to do.
Yeah, it's like a warning sign.
Warning, yeah.
Like, danger, wrong way.
But they didn't stop there.
No, they went a step further.
They explained why it was wrong.
They explained why.
Yeah.
So not only are they showing it, like, here's the wrong way, but they're also saying, here's why it's the wrong way.
So it's like they're dissecting the error, like, this is what went wrong, but also, here's the mechanics of why it went wrong.
Exactly. They're breaking it down so it
Okay.
can really understand.
And they tested this on a whole bunch of different LLMs, right?
Yeah.
Different data sets.
Yeah. They used GPT 3.5 Turbo,
Okay.
GPT-4 Mini, Gemini Pro, even DeepSeek, that big 67B parameter model.
Wow.
And they used all sorts of data sets.
Like what kinds of data sets?
They had disambiguation questions, math word problems, even understanding tables of data.
So a real range of
Or a real mix.
different kinds of problems.
Yeah, they really wanted to put it through its paces.
See if this, like, tough love approach really worked.
Exactly.
And what were the results?
The results were impressive. Across the board, adding those incorrect reasoning paths led to significant improvements.
So it wasn't just a clever idea. It actually worked.
It actually worked.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So, like, in what ways? Can you give us an example of, like, how much it improved?
Sure. Let's take Gemini Pro. On a task involving tracking shuffled objects,
Go ahead.
its accuracy jumped over 6%.
Wow. That's huge.
When they trained it with these incorrect reasoning examples.
Yeah.
So it's not just a small improvement, it's a substantial boost.
That's really significant. So this could be, like, a game changer for LLMs,
Yeah, I think so.
especially for, more complex real-world applications.
Absolutely. Where reasoning is really important.
Yeah.
You want to make sure the model's not making those silly mistakes.
Right.
So giving it that extra training with those incorrect examples seems to really help.
So they didn't stop there, right? They also looked at where the errors came from.
Yeah, that's right.
So they looked at handcrafted errors.
Right.
Or they created the errors themselves.
Yeah.
But they also looked at errors that the models generated.
They did.
Wait, so they had the LLMs create their own OBUN errors.
They did.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, it's a little meta, isn't it?
It is.
But the idea was, if the LLM can generate its own errors, maybe it can learn from them even better.
Oh, okay.
Like, it's recognizing its own weaknesses.
So it's like the LLMs are teaching themselves.
In a way, yeah.
That's really cool. And what did they find? Like, did that actually work?
It did. In many cases, those self-generated errors led to even better performance
Really?
than the handcrafted ones.
Wow.
So it seems like LLMs can be pretty good teachers.
Themselves.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. But I mean, that raises the question of like, if showing LLMs incorrect reasoning is so effective, what does that mean for, like, how we train these models?
Yeah.
In the future?
That's a great question. And I don't think the paper has all the answers. But it definitely opens up a whole new avenue of exploration.
Yeah.
We've been so focused on giving these models perfect data.
Right.
But maybe that's not the best way.
Maybe we need to give them a little bit of constructive criticism
Exactly.
along the way
A little tough love.
to help them learn.
But yeah, to help them grow.
Now, remember how we talked about the CoT being sensitive to those errors
Yeah.
in the intermediate steps?
Yeah, like messing up the ingredients in the cake.
Right, those crucial steps.
Yeah.
Well, they wanted to see what would happen if they, like, tampered with those ingredients
Oh, okay.
in a very specific way.
Interesting.
So instead of just throwing in random errors,
Mm-hmm.
they wanted to see if they could kind of, like, steer the LM
Mm-hmm.
towards specific conclusions
Okay.
by manipulating those errors
Interesting.
in those intermediate steps.
So instead of just letting it make random errors,
Yeah.
they're intentionally introducing errors
Yeah.
to try to lead it down a certain path.
To see if they could, like, hack the reasoning process.
Exact.
That's kind of scary,
At
actually.
least a little bit, yeah.
So were they able to do it?
They were.
Really?
Yeah, they found that by manipulating those intermediate steps,
Mm-hmm.
like by swapping keywords or changing the order of operations.
Okay.
They could guide the LLM
Wow.
towards different conclusions.
And were those conclusions
Yes, sir.
correct?
Sometimes they were, but often they were incorrect.
So they could actually steer it towards wrong answers.
They could.
That's both fascinating and a little unsettling.
It is.
It's like it shows that these LLMs, even though they're incredibly smart, they can still be susceptible to manipulation.
Yeah, if you know how to exploit them,
Right.
if you know how to kind of play with their reasoning process, you can lead them astray.
So it really underscores the importance of understanding these vulnerabilities and developing safeguards
Absolutely.
to prevent that kind of manipulation.
We need to understand how they work.
Yeah.
So we can protect against these kinds of attacks.
But it also, it presents an opportunity, right?
It does.
If we can understand how to leverage these errors to steer LLMs, maybe we can use that same knowledge to enhance their reasoning.
Yeah, that's
in positive ways.
Instead of using it to trick them,
right?
We can use it to teach them.
It's like instead of just showing the LLM the one correct path, we're showing it a variety of paths.
Right.
Some right, some wrong.
And letting it figure out which ones are better.
Yeah.
Which ones lead to the right answers.
And maybe that's the better way to train them.
It could be.
Than just giving them the perfect examples.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of struggle is good for them.
A little bit of adversity builds character.
Exactly.
Even for LLMs.
Even for LLM. Yeah, it's like giving them some training wheels.
Training wheels.
Yeah.
But not to hold them back.
Right.
But to help them,
to guide them.
To guide them.
Yeah.
To help them avoid the pitfalls.
And learn faster.
So it's really
fascinating idea.
It is fascinating that these errors can actually be used to improve these models.
Yeah, it's like we're turning this weakness into a strength.
Yeah.
By understanding it.
And using it.
And using it to our advantage.
Which our advantage.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It's exciting.
It is exciting. It's like we're just scratching the surface of what these models can do.
Yeah, I think so.
And this whole idea of error-aware training.
Yeah.
Could be a real game changer.
Yeah. It's a whole new way of thinking about how we train these models.
Yeah.
And how we can help them reach their full potential. Yeah.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of chain of thought prompting.
Yeah.
And all these fascinating ideas about how to train these models.
It's been a real eye-opener.
Yeah, it has. We've gone from, just the basics of CoT to this mind-blowing concept of error-aware demonstrations.
Yeah, it's amazing how much progress is being made in this field.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we've learned that these LLMs, they're incredibly capable, but they're not perfect.
Right.
They have these vulnerabilities.
They're still under development. They're still learning.
And it's important to understand those vulnerabilities so we can address them
and make them even better.
Yeah. But we've also seen that these errors, these mistakes, can actually be a source of learning, a source of improvement.
Absolutely.
And that's really exciting.
It's a whole new perspective on how we can push these models forward.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It has. And until next time, keep those minds curious and those algorithms humming.